This is simple yet advanced execution and songwriting from Kendrick, reminiscent of a dribble sequence from Kyrie Irving. Why would the homeless man address Kendrick as my son if he didn't know him personally? Kendrick is able to look at the beast, often associated as the devil, in the face because of his faith in God and his confidence in himself. This is what art is supposed to do: challenge thought patterns, bring forth different perspectives, share worldviews, and inspire those who listen. Kendrick Lamar checked all those boxes. After some tracks that detail Kendrick's internal struggles and temptations, he returns to more of the soulful, heartfelt, peaceful part of himself, which what he alludes to throughout Momma, ending every verse with the idea of coming back home. And what I instantly thought of is that while this song isn't necessarily an ode to his mother, as the title might suggest, it does center around the theme of home. And few people in our lives resemble home quite like our mothers, or those who raised us with loving, nurturing energy. Additionally, this song, for me, is one of Kendrick's best displays of his pen on the album as he flexes his use of internal rhymes. One of my favorite parts in the first verse was this sequence. Been in it before internet had new acts. Mimicking radio's nemesis made me whack. My innocence limited, the experience lacked. 10 of us with no tentative tactic that cracked. The mind of a literate writer, but I did it in fact. You admitted it once I submitted it, wrapped in plastic. Remember scribbling, scratching diligent sentences backwards, visiting freestyle ciphers for your reaction. Woo. Ooh, that boy cold. That boy cold. The syllability, the rhyme schemes. This is simple yet advanced execution and songwriting from Kendrick, reminiscent of a dribble sequence from Kyrie Irving. I'm telling you, it's that good. But of course, this is the gist of a verse where Kendrick reflects on his career journey before eventually revealing that despite the good that a career in rap has allowed him to see, it did more for him. It brought him home, or kept him grounded and not be pimped. Thank God for rap. I would say it got me a plaque, but what's better than that? The fact that it brought me home. It's great that Kendrick to this day has understood the bigger picture and what really matters despite his success. Momma was a great way to show that. It's easy to get lost in the opportunities fame and success presents, hence the chorus of the song being a repetition of "We've been waiting for you, waiting for you." Some of this continues in the second verse where Kendrick starts off almost every line with "I know" statements. He seems to once again nod to his moral compass, how he knows riches like money, cars, and clothes, but also acknowledges genuine riches like loyalty and respect. Eventually, by the end of the verse, he expresses humility, mentioning how in the midst of everything he does know, home reminds him that he knows nothing, which many fans have attributed to how the Bible stresses the importance of relying on godly wisdom as opposed to worldly wisdom. I know everything, the highs, the lows, the groupies, the junkies. I know if I'm generous at heart, I don't need recognition. The way I'm rewarded, well, that's God's decision. I know you know that line's for Compton School District. Just give it to the kids. Don't gossip about how it was distributed. I know how people work. I know the price of life. I'm knowing how much it's worth. I know what I know, and I know it well not to ever forget until I realized I didn't know Jack the day I came home. Now, another interesting note is that around this time, Kendrick had went on a trip to South Africa. So there's also the aspect of how quite literally Kendrick went back to his roots. He went back to Africa and was able to immerse himself in a part of the world where his fame and earthly riches didn't matter. Later in verse 3, Kendrick elaborates on his experience in Africa as he tells the story of meeting a young boy that resembled him and reminded him of the importance of staying grounded, taking this experience to heart, and even encourage his homies back in Compton to do the same. But before I highlight that, there was a part earlier in the verse that stuck out to me. He looked at me and said, "Kendrick, you do know my language. You just forgot because of what public schools had painted." I love this because it points to how the image of Africa is portrayed in not just schools, but some TV shows and media as well. We often hear how Africa is filled with starving children and poor living conditions and all these things. But when you look at people who actually visit or even live in Africa, you see the joy that exists there. You see the education that exists there and that they do actually speak English. And I think even in this song, Kendrick isn't entirely talking about spoken language. He's referring to language as in shared values and inheritances. And as I mentioned previously, the verse ends with the boy encouraging Kendrick to share his experience with his homies, which now that I think about it, phonetically plays on the word home as well, right? Take it to your homies. Can't spell homies without home. Right? I can attempt to enlighten you without frightening you. If you resist, I'll back off quick, go catch a flight or two. But if you pick destiny over rest in peace, then be an advocate. Tell your homies especially to come back home. Again, come back home serves as a double entendre here. I see the meaning of the boy urging Kendrick to encourage his homies to come to Africa, but I also see it as a deeper meaning of now that Kendrick has been grounded, he can take the knowledge and wisdom he has acquired back home and educate those that see him as a person of influence. So like I said, a nice song from Kendrick with the theme of humility, but it doesn't end there. The song gradually transitions into a totally different direction, featuring a more energetic and less grounded Kendrick Lamar as he seems to question God. First, we hear these lines. I've been looking for you my whole life, an appetite for the feeling I can barely describe. Where you reside? Is it in a woman? Is it in money or mankind? I've been looking for you my whole life, an appetite for the feeling I can barely describe. Where you reside? Is it in a woman? Is it in money or mankind? Tell me something. Think I'm losing my mind. We can sense that this plays on how when we aren't grounded in our faith, we often try to find God in other people or things. We seek to find his love or comfort in a romantic partner. We seek to find his security and provision and money, and it's an appetite that can only be filled by him. Kendrick is spiraling, struggling with these thoughts. Then we hear this outro. I say, where you at? From the front to the back. I'm looking for you. I react only when you react. I thought I found you back in the ghetto when I was 17 with the 38 special. Maybe you're in a dollar bill. Maybe you're not real. Maybe only the wealthy get to know how you feel. Maybe I'm paranoid. Maybe I don't need you anyway. Don't lie to me. I'm suicidal anyway. I can be your advocate. I can preach for you if you tell me what the matter is. So just when Kendrick seemed to be grounded, he's back in the spiral that is very reminiscent of what we heard in You, how he's dealing with suicidal thoughts and wrestling with the presence of God. What if he's in the money, but what if he's not real? Maybe he's only for the wealthy because they seem to have everything I dream of. Maybe I don't need you then. How do I know your word is true? An interesting, sudden ending to a song that seemed to be a turning point for Kendrick, but as we'll soon unpack, while Momma details the wisdom he acquired throughout his upbringing and success, which eventually inspired him to stay humble, the next track, Hood Politics, features Kendrick going back to the time where the only knowledge he had was what took place in his hood. Given the title, Hood Politics, Kendrick gives a glimpse into the values and standards that were held growing up in Compton. Some examples of this throughout the song are how in the first verse, Kendrick opens up the song with lines that in the grand scheme reflect the value of life and time. I don't give a blank about no politics and rap, homie. Our little homie Stunner Deuce ain't never coming back, homie. So you better go hard every time you jump on wax, homie. Bump what they talking about. Your ish is where it's at, homie. In honor of his deceased friend, Kendrick echoes the encouragement from whom we can presume are his other friends as they motivate him to put his all into his music and disregard what any hater, what any critic has to say about it. Later on in the second verse, we hear Kendrick in clever fashion compare the famous Blood and Crip gangs to Republicans and Democrats, correlating their colors of red and blue, respectively, and the idea of hood politics and American politics. They tell me it's a new gang in town, from Compton to Congress, set tripping all around. Ain't nothing new but a flu of new demo Crips and Republicans, red state versus blue state, which one you governing? They give us guns and drugs, call us thugs, make it they promise to mess with you. No condom, they get with you. Obama say, what it do? Notice how Kendrick even refers to Democrats as Democrips and Republicans to Republicans to further illustrate their commonalities, right? This way, Kendrick elaborates on the idea that American politics are no different than what goes on in the streets of Compton. There is a rivalry between two parties, power imbalances, promises, and loyalty that often extends to dangerous lengths within the followers, right? Furthermore, Kendrick calls out the way the government has treated poor neighborhoods, going back to the crack epidemic. To me, Kendrick is essentially saying they give us guns and drugs, yet call us thugs and they mess with our heads, professing hope for a better future only to stab us in the back. And even with a black president, he is still a part of that system where he doesn't have as much power as we are led to believe. So even he, despite his familiarity with the black experience, he can't do much to change what has been in place for decades. He's not going to single-handedly erase all of this. So we get a double entendre of hood politics, if you will. The politics or systems and standards in the hood are really influenced by the politics of the American government. Kendrick ends his second verse with the truth bomb. And then, as we heard in verse 3, Kendrick turns his focus to more of the politics scene in hip hop and rap as he opens the verse with, "Everybody want to talk about who this and who that, who the realest and who whack, or who white or who black. Critics want to mention that they missed when hip hop was rapping. If you did, then Killer Mike be platinum. Y'all priorities jacked up. Put energy in wrong stuff. Hennessy and Crown Vic, my memory been gone since." Kendrick seems to call out whom we can presume are fans and media who repeatedly focus on the wrong topics when it comes to the art. For him, it's too much petty back and forth and meaningless debates questioning who's real versus who's whack. He also calls out the contradiction that many people miss real hip hop, quote unquote, but struggle to acknowledge the artists who are keeping that style alive, which to him at this time was Atlanta MC and one half of the duo Run the Jewels, Killer Mike. One thing about Kendrick is that he has never been afraid to call it how he sees it, and he does that throughout hood politics. Later in the verse, he addresses the East versus West Coast tension, something that seemed to revive itself once he dropped his famous Control verse in 2013, where he proclaimed dominance as an MC, being on top of both the West and East. However, Kendrick recognized the potential impact and didn't want history to repeat itself as he refers to the beef that ensued around the mid-90s when Tupac and Biggie were beefing. K-Dot, what's up? I heard they opened up Pandora's box. I boxed them all in by a landslide. Nah, homie, we too sensitive. It'll spill out to the streets. I make the call and get the coast involved and history repeats. But I resolved inside that private hall when sitting down with Jay. He said it's funny how one verse can tear up the game. So rather than putting gas on the fire, Kendrick was able to settle things down with Jay-Z, who had been widely received as the East Coast king much of his career, so the situation wouldn't escalate. The way Kendrick handled the situation further reflects him being A1 since day one, as he states in the chorus of the song, and to me, showcased more of the wisdom we heard in Momma. But once again, the first line of the chorus is interrupted as the song ends, revealing more of Kendrick's ongoing poem throughout the album. You'll notice that the added lines continue to line up with the themes and the content we've heard in the last few tracks. I remember you was conflicted, misusing your influence. Sometimes I did the same. Abusing my power, full of resentment that turned into a deep depression. Found myself screaming in a hotel room. I didn't want to self-destruct. The evils of Lucy was all around me, so I went running for answers until I came home. But that didn't stop survivor's guilt, going back and forth, trying to convince myself the stripes I earned, or maybe how A1 my foundation was. But while my loved ones was fighting a continuous war back in the city, I was entering a new one. So notice we left off with Kendrick coming home. Now he mentions that coming home, Momma, didn't stop his survivor's guilt. He's reflecting on his roots and the issues of Compton, hood politics, while fighting issues of his own as he ushers in the next song and another one that was included in my top 3, actually taking the top spot, How Much a Dollar Cost. This is one of my all-time favorite Kendrick Lamar songs. Anytime someone asks me what my favorite Kendrick songs are, this song and Wanna Be Heard are always the first two that come to mind. It's a simple instrumental with an incredible deep story that is faith-based. It checks all the boxes for me. Yet again, I believe Kendrick uses the title to pose a deeper question. How much does greed cost? See, Kendrick tells a tale based on an interaction with a homeless man while he was in Africa, as the man ends up teaching him a lesson about selfishness. To Kendrick, a dollar bill didn't mean as much until it costed him an eternal reward. How much a dollar really cost? The question is detrimental, paralyzing my thoughts. Parasites in my stomach keep me with a gut feeling, y'all. Gotta see how I'm chilling once I park this luxury car. Hopping out feeling big as Matumbo, 20 on pump 6. Dirty Marcellus called me Dumbo. 20 years ago, can't forget. Now I lend him an ear or two, how to stack these residuals tenfold. The liberal concept of what men will do. 20 on 6, he didn't hear me. Indigenous African only spoke Zulu. So Kendrick arrives at a gas station ready to fill his luxury car, but as detailed by the mention of parasites eating away at his stomach, we can infer that he's wary of the homeless people that surround him. He's wary of the area that he's in, getting this gut feeling that something is brewing. Despite feeling like he's on top of the world, driving a luxury car, very successful, even going as far as saying that unlike his 5'6" stature, he feels as big as NBA legend Dikembe Mutombo, a 7-footer known as one of the greatest interior defenders of all time. He knows he's bound to run into one of the homeless individuals. Safe to say Kendrick's gut feeling was correct as he details his initial interaction with the homeless man in the next set of lines. My American tongue was leery. Walked out the gas station. A homeless man with a semi-tan complexion asked me for 10 rand, stressing about dry land. Deep water, powder blue skies that crack open, a piece of crack that he wanted. I knew he was smoking. He begged and pleaded and asked me to feed him twice. I didn't believe it, told him beat it. So there's quite a bit to unpack here. I want you to first pay attention to the ways Kendrick describes the homeless man. Semi-tan, stressing about dry land and blue skies that crack open. And listening to this in hindsight, it's easier to observe. But if you analyze this description, someone might come to mind. Semi-tan skin. The Bible has plenty of reference points to the Middle East, where there are a lot more people of color. Next, God warned Noah of a flood that was coming, which is why he urged him to build the ark, despite not knowing when the flood would come. And lastly, upon the second coming of Jesus, the book of Revelations details that Jesus will come from the heavens on a horse. In other words, the sky cracking and the trumpet sounding are two of the most notable things that will happen upon Jesus' return. It would make sense why the homeless man might be associated with similar matters. But Kendrick, no stranger to these interactions, assumes the man wants to use his money for drugs and waves him off. He continues, ending the verse avoiding the homeless man. Contributing money just for his pipe, I couldn't see it. He said, "My son, temptation is one thing that I've defeated. Listen to me. I want a single bill from you. Nothing less, nothing more." I told him I ain't have it and I closed my door. Tell me how much $1 costs. Another clue is revealed here. Why would the homeless man address Kendrick as my son if he didn't know him personally? Secondly, he tells Kendrick that he's defeated temptation, something we've analyzed over the course of the show. And he's very specific with Kendrick, only asking for $1, no more, no less. But still, Kendrick turns away from the homeless man. We then hear the first rendition of the chorus from James Fauntleroy, who sings, "It's more to feed your mind, water, sun, and love, the one you love, all you need, the air you breathe." You'll notice that in the midst of these necessities, money is not mentioned. That brings us to verse 2, where Kendrick struggles to reject the homeless man. He's staring at me in disbelief. My temper is building. He's staring at me. I grabbed my key. He's staring at me. I started the car, then I tried to leave, and something told me to keep it in park until I could see. The reason why he was mad at a stranger, like I was supposed to save him, like I'm the reason he's homeless and asking me for a favor. He's staring at me. His eyes followed me with no laser. He's staring at me. I noticed that his stare is contagious. Now, I love this part of the song because it represents the way that God will absolutely get his point across to us. We can say no to God all we want to, but at some point, we will give in and attempt to do things his way. If you're like me, you grew up with a parent that had the stare. In the midst of any disobedience, there was always something that made me straighten up my act in record time. My mama's stare. The stare is lethal because you realize a look as firm as a mean mug and as vicious as a scowl takes the place where words were once said. It was one thing for my mom to gather me up with her words, but when a whole other thing when she didn't have to say anything. That same stare from the homeless man is what triggers Kendrick Lamar, yet keeps him around to hear out the homeless man some more. It triggered him because he's seen that stare before. He believes the homeless man is arrogant enough to think that Kendrick owes him, but he'll soon learn that there is nothing like the relentless stare of a parent. Because now I'm staring back at him, feeling some type of disrespect. If I could throw a bat at him, I'd be aiming at his neck. I never understood someone begging for goods, asking for handouts, taking it if they could. And this particular person just had it down pat, staring at me for the longest until he finally asked, "Have you ever opened up Exodus 14? A humble man is all that we ever need. Tell me how much $1 costs." Still annoyed and angry, Kendrick is about sick of this man to the point he feels disrespected that the homeless man has the nerve to eyeball him after rejection. We can sense Kendrick's struggle with pride here, which is why the homeless man asks him if he knew about Exodus 14 in the Bible, where God helps Moses part the Red Sea so the Israelites could overcome the Egyptians en route to the Promised Land. A key part of this story, though, is the idea of one's heart being hardened, something that is mentioned all throughout the Bible, as the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart so the Israelites could successfully continue their journey. Likewise, in this verse, we hear how Kendrick's heart was hardened towards the homeless man. His initial dismissive rejection turned into anger, and reading his anger, the homeless man took the opportunity to teach him about humility. After another chorus from James Fauntleroy, we get into the last verse where we find out what the interaction leads to. Guilt tripping and feeling resentment, I never met a transient that demanded attention. They got me frustrated, indecisive, and power tripping. Sour emotions got me looking at the universe different. I should distance myself. I should keep it relentless. My selfishness is what got me here. Who the heck am I kidding? So I'm gonna tell you like I told the last bum. Crumbs and pennies. I need all mines. And I recognize this type of panhandling all the time. I got better judgment. I know when brothers hustling. Keep in mind, when I was struggling, I did compromise. Now I comprehend. So just as Kendrick starts to feel sorry for the homeless man and give in to his pride, he snaps out of it and doubles down on his selfishness, further revealing the greed and tight grip he has on his wallet, even if it's just $1. He continues to express how he is convinced the homeless man is going to use the dollar for drugs because that's what he saw all the time growing up. He doesn't want to be fooled by this guy. He even reflects back to his youth when he didn't have much, assuming that unlike the homeless man, Kendrick didn't waste the little money he had on things like drugs. He feels that if he can overcome his circumstances, the homeless man should be able to do the same. Now, early in the verse, you'll notice Kendrick raps, "I never met a transient that demanded attention." The word transient means a person who is staying or working somewhere for a short time, which could be a double entendre. One meaning could be that, ideally, homelessness is a temporary circumstance. The other meaning is that parallel to Jesus, that he knew he wasn't going to be on earth long, reminding his disciples often that he was here to do the Father's will and would eventually be at his right hand. So the fact that Kendrick refers to the homeless man as a transient being is yet another clue that the man is God. Moving on with the verse. I smell grandpa's old medicine, reeking from your skin, moonshine and gin. Homie, you're babbling. Your words ain't flattering. I'm imagining Denzel, but looking at O'Neal. Kazam is sad thrills. Your gimmick is mediocre. The jig is up. I seen you from a mile away, losing focus. Now, at first, I always thought this was Kendrick finding familiarity with the homeless man, but instead, Kendrick continues to call cap on the homeless man after smelling the alcohol on his breath. He's convinced the man is pretending so that Kendrick will give him the dollar. Kendrick then compares the man's fronting to the acting chops of Denzel Washington opposite of Shaquille O'Neal in the infamous Kazam movie. Rather than possessing the skill and experience of Denzel, he sees right through him, revealing that his acting is as bad as Shaq's in that movie. Kendrick isn't falling for the trap and believes he successfully trusted his gut until the homeless man ends the verse with the striking revelation we've been waiting for. And I'm insensitive and I lack empathy. He looked at me and said, your potential is bittersweet. I looked at him and said, every nickel is mine to keep. He looked at me and said, know the truth, it'll set you free. You're looking at the Messiah, the Son of Jehovah, the higher power, the choir that spoke the word, the Holy Spirit, the nerve of Nazareth, and I'll tell you just how much $1 cost. The price of having a spot in heaven. Embrace your loss. I am God. Ooh. So notice, after asking how much $1 cost at the end of the first two verses, the homeless man tells Kendrick exactly how much it cost at the end of the third verse. The kingdom of heaven. The homeless man saw potential in Kendrick because of his influence in the world, but because of his greed, it limits his impact. So his potential is bittersweet. Furthermore, this ending to the song reminds me of the parable of the rich fool in the Bible. In the book of Luke chapter 12, there is a rich man who made it a goal to store up his wealth and enjoy it for himself. But God calls him out, essentially asking him, what's the point of the wealth if you aren't willing to share it? Especially as his life could end at any moment. Who would he have to give that to? Of course, there is also the parable in Matthew 25 where Jesus warns those that are selfish that if they don't have the heart to serve others, they shouldn't expect them to maintain the ability to serve him. As it relates to the song, Kendrick was unable to join the kingdom of heaven simply because he did not give the homeless man $1 out of the abundance of money he possessed. And because of his selfishness, he missed out on a reward that has much greater value than anything financial. So for Kendrick, $1 costed him eternal life. This leads to an outro from the legend Ron Isley, who, with Kendrick's character in mind, presumably offers a prayer for forgiveness. I washed my hands, I said my grace, what more do you want from me? Tears of a clown, guess I'm not all what it's meant to be. Shades of gray will never change if I condone. Turn this page, help me change to right my wrongs. Of course, I see it as a prayer of forgiveness, but Genius contributors made the connection to Pontius Pilate in the Bible, who was the one who sentenced Jesus to death. Like Pilate towards Jesus, Kendrick was triggered by the homeless man. Despite making efforts to spare Jesus' life, he washed his hands, declared Jesus innocent, but left the public to choose what they wanted to do with him. While he sought to pass the responsibility to others, he was still ultimately responsible for being head of the system that ended up killing Jesus. Similarly, Kendrick may have asked for forgiveness, but still is a part of a society that overlooks the homeless. I thought that was an interesting connection from the Genies community. No matter the takeaway, though, Kendrick delivers yet another thought provoking track that challenges himself and us as listeners to check our morals and make wiser choices. And after tackling a societal issue like homelessness in this song, he goes to another one in the next song, Complexion, that addresses colorism in track 12. Complexion features Rhapsody, and I mean, what a perfect match we get for this song. Kendrick tags in Rhapsody for a smooth ballad that stresses the importance of loving others regardless of skin tone. Of course, this can go two ways. Loving others no matter their race, and more specifically as black people, loving each other regardless of shade. This is reflected directly in the chorus recited by legendary producer and DJ Pete Rock, who says, Complexion. Complexion don't mean a thing. Ooh, complexion. It all feels the same. Kendrick Lamar uses the first line of both his first and second verses to emphasize the point as well. For an example, here's how he starts verse 1. Dark as the midnight hour or bright as the morning sun. Give a blank about your complexion. I know what the Germans done. We hear how he compares the darkness of one's skin to the sky at midnight and the brightness as the morning sky. He also references Nazi Germany's anti-Semitism, mentioning that unlike them, he doesn't discriminate. Furthermore, in his second verse, he references a moment where his wife gave him a new perspective on colorism. So I'm going to say something that's vital and critical for survival. Of mankind, a feline color should never rival. Beauty is what you make it. I used to be so mistaken by different shades of faces. Then Wit told me, a woman is woman, love the creation. It all came from God, then you was my confirmation. Kendrick reveals his past ignorance, maybe for lack of a better term, regarding his views on colorism, seemingly putting more value in a woman's skin tone as opposed to who she was as a person, until his wife reminded him that women are God's creation, so the creation should have higher value than something like skin tone. Of course, we can only infer that this moment happened. Maybe his wife said it in a totally different conversation, but Kendrick applied that lesson to colorism. Either way, Kendrick details a wake-up call courtesy of his wife and encourages us to see the world the same way. Soon after this verse, we get the last one from Rhapsody, who poetically details her firsthand experience with colorism while affirming other black women and men that their black is beautiful. 12 years of age, thinking my shade too dark. I love myself. I no longer need Cupid. Enforcing my dark side like a young George Lucas. Light don't mean you smart. Being dark don't make you stupid. Talk to him, Rap. Talk to him. Rhapsody reflects on how, as a youth, she felt she was too dark due to the beauty standards that have existed for decades. This is why she also emphasizes that complexion doesn't dictate intelligence. And might I add, Rhapsody has plenty of clever bars in her verse. Obviously, here she references George Lucas, creator of Star Wars, which nods to the concept of the dark side. Even then, that carries a deeper meaning for Rap, who once dropped Thank Her Now, her 2011 project that featured a Star Wars themed cover and a track called Black Girl Jedi. So that bar carried even more depth for her. Another bar she had was, like two Todds, LL, you lose two times. If you don't see you beautiful in your complexion. If you listen to this podcast, you definitely caught that this is a play on LL Cool J's real name, James Todd Smith. But she also makes the point that the world already looks down on black people. And if you're darker skinned, you will even get looked down upon by lighter skinned black folks. 2 L's or 2 losses. J. Cole actually had a similar line on the more recent single Blow for Blow with T Grizzly. He was like, taking L after L, I got to laugh. Y'all look like James Todd Smith autograph. So Rhapsody did a similar thing years back. A few lines down, Rhapsody delivered an even better punchline. Ain't no stress, Jigaboo's wannabe. I ain't talking J, I ain't talking B. I'm talking days we got school watching movie screens and spike your self-esteem. That first part I caught instantly. She plays on the derogatory phrase jigaboo by mentioning Jay-Z, also known as Jigga. Who is Jigga's boo? Beyonce knows. Yet she clarifies saying it's not even about that surface level punchline. She's addressing how she can shrug off the jigaboo slur because black people are often emulated. But what I didn't catch was the second half where she references Spike Lee's film School Days, a movie that addresses colorism. The film features the jigaboos versus the wannabes, the dark-skinned girls versus the light-skinned girls, and Rhapsody nods to that impact of how certain portrayals can impact one's self-esteem. Then she ends her verse in a way only Rhapsody can end it. Black is brown, hazelnut, cinnamon, black tea, and it's all beautiful to me. Call your brothers magnificent, call all the sisters queens, we all on the same team. Blues and Pyrus, no colors ain't a thing. She compares different shades of black people to subjects associated with cuisine, like hazelnut, cinnamon, black tea. And after encouraging a call to action for us to affirm fellow black men and women, she reminds us that we are all on the same team, similar to Crips and Bloods. There's no need for war when we are essentially fighting for the same causes. So, of course, this is a great connection from Rhapsody because the gangs are known by their colors, right? Extending the colorism theme to the streets. And it even serves as a perfect segue into the next track, The Blacker the Berry, the song that features Kendrick Lamar venting about his thoughts on black crime. The blacker the berry, the sweeter the juice is an expression dating back to 1929, where Wallace Thurman released his novel, The Blacker the Berry, that addressed colorism. It was meant to combat colorism with positivity. Fast forward to circa 1993, where Tupac Shakur started off Keep Your Head Up with the same phrase, as he used that song to voice similar empowerment towards black women. While these themes exist a lot more in Complexion, this time Kendrick Lamar uses the phrase to address the roots of black on black crime, saying the blacker the berry, the sweeter the juice, as in juice or respect on the streets. At least that's how I thought of it. While Kendrick mentions black on black crime, he's very vocal about how black on black crime has been influenced by the government, most notably once the crack epidemic hit. With that in mind, other theories suggest the idea that the juice represents blood, so the sweeter the juice part represents the increased odds of black folks being targeted. Either way, the pre-chorus of the song is where these ideas might come to mind. The blacker the berry, the sweeter the juice. The blacker the berry, the sweeter the juice. The blacker the berry, the sweeter the juice. The blacker the berry, the bigger I shoot. But before this, the song starts with an intro, followed by a bridge, and then Kendrick's first verse. The intro seems to reflect double-mindedness between black people in America as it features back and forth statements. Everything black. I don't want black. I want everything black. I ain't need black. Some white, something black. I ain't mean black. I hate everything black. Black, I want all things black. I don't need black. I want everything black. I don't need black. Our eyes ain't black. I own black. I own everything black. So the first half seems to go from pro-black to division, and the second half seems to go from division to acceptance back to division again. For black people, it's easy to profess pro-black ideologies, but then when we're faced with the reality of how we're treated in the real world, it's like a back and forth cycle of I'm valued, then I'm not. And really, if we're thinking about this from the lens of black on black crime, it's the same thing. 1 minute it's love my brothers and sisters, but the streets reflect otherwise. In the second half, it's the opposite. America seems to disregard us until they see we can bring the nation money. And I think that's why the last line stresses the idea of ownership. Additionally, if you connect the parts in parentheses delivered by Layla Hathaway, it reads, they want us to bow down to our needs and pray to the God we don't believe. And it immediately reminded me of the unfortunate belief that many black folks have received, that God doesn't care for them because of their environment. And this has come up on the show before. I understand it. You hear statements like Christianity is the white man's religion and it's meant to keep black people in struggle. God isn't real because if he was, we wouldn't be in this situation. All those things. Kendrick subtly voices that perspective in the midst of this song as well, intensifying the internal struggles black people experience in America. And while that's just the intro, Kendrick goes into a bridge where he seems to once again rap with black on black crime in America in mind, but given the mention of fire in the street associated with protest riots, it's likely a response to police brutality. But you'll notice that he ends with the bridge with black don't crack, nodding to the adage that highlights black people's ability to maintain smooth, youthful skin into older ages. But in this song, Kendrick uses the phrase to say that black people won't fold under the circumstances stacked against them. As for the verses, Kendrick starts all three of his with the phrase, I'm the biggest hypocrite of 2015, as he raps with anger over the violence that occurs in rougher neighborhoods before eventually revealing his hypocritical ways by the end of the song. In verse 1, Kendrick acknowledges how America tends to look at black people while understanding that the same hate expressed from them is the same hate that fuels black on black crime. I believe this is reflected in lines like, you hate me, don't you? You hate my people. Your plan is to terminate my culture. Throughout the verse, Kendrick claims the same stereotypes and slurs associated with black people, pointing out his complexion, his nose, his hair, and even proclaims himself as a proud monkey. Think of how Eminem's character on 8 Mile did a similar thing in his final battle versus Papa Doc, right? Claiming the statements used against him with the spirit of empowerment, so Papa Doc had nothing to say in return. Eventually, at the end, Kendrick raps, I'm guarding my feelings. I know that you feel it. You sabotage my community, making me a killing. You made me a killer. Emancipation of a real, never ignorant, getting goals accomplished. So again, we hear Kendrick calling out America for ruining his community, his environment, and influencing him to make the damage worse through black on black crime, gang violence, drug abuse, those kind of issues. And I love how he ended it with the emancipation of a real ninja, because he's saying, since I'm now a killer of my community, no longer am I a real one. The system America put in place influenced me to be free or emancipated from my true purpose and identity within my community. I love how he articulated that. Some passionate lyrics from Kendrick though, right? Like, we get every emotion in this album, the joy, the depression, the anger, the ignorance, the positivity, just everything. Now, after the pre-chorus we went over earlier, there's the chorus from Assassin, who worked with artists like Royce da 5'9", Kanye West, and Freddie Gibbs. And in Jamaican patois, he says, I said they treat me like a slave because I'm black. We feel a whole heap of pain because we black. And man, I say they put me in chains because we black. Imagine now, big gold chains full of rocks. How you not see the whip left scars upon my back? But now we have a big whip parked upon the block. All them say we doomed from the start because we black. Remember this, every race start from the black. Just remember that. Similarly, Assassin expresses the black experience in America, but in a more hopeful way. He uses the classic rockin' chains when we used to be in them theme heard in hip hop, as I literally quote, blew from below the heavens. The phrase is commonly used to express black folks' ability to overcome, most notably from slavery to freedom. We hear this as he says, they put me in chains because we black. Imagine now, big gold chains full of rocks. Likewise, he follows that up with, how you not see the whip left scars on my back. Now we have a big whip parked on the block. See, before ending it with a drop of wisdom and hope, reminding us that while it's often said we've been doomed from the start, the first humans originated in Africa. So it could be that we're not doomed after all. It certainly makes you think, right? Like, I love the depth of this song. But next up is Kendrick's second verse, where he challenges America's systems and beliefs that aren't 100% true nor helpful for black people, like the prison system and freedom. He details this in the following lines. I mean, it's evident that I'm irrelevant to society. That's what you're telling me. Penitentiary would only hire me, curse me till I'm dead, church me with your fake prophesizing. That I'ma be just another slave in my head. Institutionalized manipulation and lies, reciprocation of freedom only live in your eyes. Kendrick confronts the ways America has tried to convince black people that they are more likely to end up incarcerated, to which is another method of slavery. It aligns with the theme of black on black crime because, again, if the world can influence black people to destroy their own communities from the inside out, it will also bring more of them to prison, essentially killing two birds with one stone. Ensuring the poor communities don't improve and the business side of prison is thriving. This is why Kendrick says that the reciprocation of freedom only lives in the eyes of those who are naive, because while, yes, black people have been physically free, on a deeper systemic level, it's hard to say that's true. Then Kendrick brings back the question of, you hate me, don't you? Before ending the verse expressing how his success makes him a threat, which again could fit both ideas behind this song. Other black folks jealous of his success may be out to get him, while America gets intimidated by his success. Either way, he ends this verse similar to the verse. How can I tell you I'm making a killing? You made me a killer, the emancipation of a real ninja. After another rendition of the pre-chorus and chorus, we get to Kendrick's final verse, where his foreshadowed hypocrisy is finally revealed thanks to some extremely memorable lines. In the beginning, he hints towards the idea of black on black crime by saying, I'm the biggest hypocrite of 2015. When I finish this, if you listen, then sure you will agree. The plot is bigger than me. It's generational hatred. Gang violence is generational hatred because of its revenge-filled nature. Sadly, the rivalries and revenge extend so long it spans generations. Kendrick continues to follow the same structure as the previous verses, proclaiming his blackness, and this time with more certainty, assuming that not just he is hated, but that black people in general are hated. Then Kendrick eventually gets to the climax of the verse, comparing the conflict between the South African Xhosa and Zulu tribes to the rivalry between the Bloods and Crips. It's funny how Zulu and Xhosa might go to war, two tribal armies that want to build and destroy. Remind me of these Compton Crip gangs that live next door, beefing with Pyrus, only death settle the score. Notice how Kendrick says that both tribes want to build and destroy, which is the same objective gangs have. See, the tribes are meant to live in peace. Similarly, gangs were initially meant to be police for their own communities. However, similar to how drugs and poverty influence negative impact, apartheid had been believed to fuel the tension between the Zulu and Xhosa tribes. So while they may have initially wanted to destroy the circumstances placed on them, the destruction turned inward instead. This sets the scene for Kendrick to reveal his hypocrisy. So no matter how much I say I'd like to preach with the Panthers or tell Georgia State Marcus Garvey got all the answers or try to celebrate February like it's my B-day or eat watermelon, chicken, and Kool-Aid on weekdays or jump high enough to get Michael Jordan endorsements or watch BET because urban support is important. So why did I weep when Trayvon Martin was in the street when gang banging make me kill a never ignorant getting goals accomplished blacker than me? Hypocrite. So you'll notice Kendrick mentions how he can do all these positive things in the black community, take the baton that was once held by the Black Panther Party, endorse the ideologies of Marcus Garvey, celebrate Black History Month with enthusiasm, enjoy stereotypical foods consumed by black folks, excel in athletics like one of the most recognizable in Michael Jordan, and watch BET to support black media and entertainment. But then he ultimately questions his own hypocrisy, asking, how could it be possible for him to show remorse for the murder of Trayvon Martin, who was a victim of racial profiling in 2012, when he is also involved in scenarios that kill other black men? How could he weep for one black person only to take a life in similar fashion? And thus he labels himself as the hypocrite he told us all song long that he was. This is certainly one of Kendrick's more thought-provoking and among the more memorable songs in his discography. It reminds me a lot of Institutionalized, where it really makes you think and process the messages in your own way. And hopefully I was able to help influence you to do the same. As we get closer to the end of the album, it brings us to the 14th track, You Ain't Gotta Lie, Momma Said. This song might be up there among my favorite beats off the entire album. It comes off very soothing and easygoing, yet soulful still. Moreover, the primary theme of You Ain't Gotta Lie is authenticity once again. Kendrick Lamar calls out individuals who feel like they gotta lie to kick it or display performative character in order to be accepted. On a much deeper level, I couldn't help but personify this simple message to the album title, being that butterflies don't go out of their way to look like another, nor do they tend to draw attention to themselves. Speaking of which, Kendrick uses the first verse to rap from the perspective of his mother, where the adage of mother knows best comes to light. I could spot you a mile away. I could see your insecurities written all on your face. So predictable, your words. I know what you're going to say. Who you fooling? Oh, you assuming you can just come and hang with the homies, but your level of realness ain't the same. Circus acts only attract those that entertain. Small talk, we know that it's all talk. We live in the laugh factory every time they mention your name. Ooh, the truth right there. The truth hurts sometimes. Kendrick's mom sees right through her son. She understands that due to his change in lifestyle, he is tempted to come back to Compton trying to fit in, as if him not being around as much doesn't matter. We can presume that she calls him out for coming back as Kendrick Lamar and not just Kendrick. The last three lines seem to allude to this, as she compares his performative ways to a circus act, which ties into that last line saying that they laugh every time they hear his name because they know he isn't being his true self. Of course, Kendrick also references the Laugh Factory, a popular comedy club in Hollywood, to illustrate the humor that ensues at the sight of Kendrick putting up a front. Then Kendrick uses the refrain throughout the song to address the similar front people tend to put up with him. Asking where the girls at to impress me. Asking where the money bags to impress me. Say you got the burner stash to impress me. It's all in your head, homie. Asking where the plug at to impress me. Asking where the jug at to impress me. Asking where it's at only upsets me. You sound like the feds, homie. So funny enough, Kendrick compares his homie to the federal government because of the high volume of questions he asks. And since all the questions start with where, it carries that similar investigative undertone. But more importantly, Kendrick sees right through him, understanding that his homie is associating him with different elements that stereotypically fit with rappers, right? Asking where the girls at, where's the money, where the drugs at. And so Kendrick stresses the point that his homie's developed an image in his mind that isn't even real, and that he shouldn't have to act differently just to impress him. This is further reflected in the chorus. You ain't gotta lie to kick it, homie. You ain't gotta lie. You ain't gotta lie. You ain't gotta lie to kick it, homie. You ain't gotta try so hard. Kendrick's theme of authenticity continues in the second verse as he seemingly calls out other rappers who generate a certain image in order to be accepted by the culture. And the world don't respect you, and the culture don't accept you, but you think it's all love. And the girls gonna neglect you once your parody is done. Reputation can't protect you if you never had one. Jealousy, complex. Emotional, complex. Self-pity, complex. Under oath, complex. The loudest one in the room, that's a complex. Despite the fans, women, and fame that can come from being in the limelight, Kendrick declares that it's not true respect and love because they aren't being authentic. The reputation that they've built isn't a firm foundation for their career. He even calls out specific patterns that tend to manifest in negative ways or complexes like jealousy or emotional complexes. Since he references these two, along with self-pity and being under oath, Kendrick addresses the outcomes of putting up a facade. It exposes deep-rooted envy or covetousness of what someone else has, mixed emotions, causes them to dwell on their own misfortunes, and of course, lies. Kendrick then adds that being the loudest in the room is a complex within itself, as he points to the old adage that the loudest in the room is usually the weakest, or in this case, the most insecure. Eventually, in the third verse, Kendrick raps about that insecurity as well, as he says, "See, loud rich suckers got low money, and loud broke suckers got no money. The irony behind it is so funny." The irony is that oftentimes those who boast about their finances are trying to convince themselves and others that they have more money than they actually do, and that because of what their bank account looks like, they are better than others. They feel like they have to prove their value, not just financially either. And by mentioning that loud, broke people have no money, Kendrick implies that these two groups are really in the same boat. So it's also ironic because in reality, the folks who flaunt their money aren't that much different from who they want to show they're better than. Ultimately, for Kendrick, the same way his mom was able to see through him in the first verse is the same way he's able to see others who put up similar fronts with him, as I'll use some other lines from his third verse to summarize the song as a whole. "You can never persuade me. You can never relate me to him, to her, or that to them, or you, the truth you love to bend." Kendrick's own authenticity allows him to easily spot out those who aren't as authentic, and Kendrick's authenticity is further elaborated on the next song, I, the self-love anthem opposite of the aforementioned song, You. Now, the thing about I is that the single version and the album version are performed differently. Of course, we will be going over the album version because there are elements not included in the single version. In particular, the album version features an intro, a different variation of the chorus, and an extended outro from Kendrick. The single version is a more polished and modified version of what is heard on the album. Kendrick Lamar looks at I as one of his best songs in his discography because of its expression and positive influence directed towards his Compton community. While the song is more about the self-love he has developed, he also delivers a message of unity to his community as he reflects on the negativity that surrounds it. He empathizes with his people and encourages them to embrace a more loving environment rather than one of hatred. And on the album, the song resembles a live performance before Kendrick eventually stops the show to address his audience, Compton. After being introduced to the stage, Kendrick's intro features a theme of overcoming obstacles. "I done been through a whole lot, trial, tribulation, but I know God. The devil want to put me in a bow tie, pray that the holy water don't go dry. Yeah, yeah. As I look around me, so many other suckers want to down me, but an amigo never drown me. In front of a dirty double mirror, they found me." Okay, so this is really dope because Kendrick mentions that despite undergoing different trials and tribulations, he knows that he has God on his side, so his faith is intact. This thought continues into the next lines as he says the devil wants to put him in a bow tie, which I associated with death, as sometimes people make gestures emulating death by cutting off or wrapping the neck, alluding to beheading or suffocation. And since a bow tie sits closer to the neck area and the syllables align with go dry in the next line, it made sense to me. Knowing the devil is after him, Kendrick prays that holy water won't dry up, or that God's favor is still upon him. Kendrick then compares the devil's yearning to steal, kill, and destroy to what goes on in his hood. But still, Kendrick maintains his faith, saying that an amigo never drown me, which is perfect delivery when Kendrick does it, because an amigo is Spanish for enemy. But Kendrick raps it in a way that sounds like an amigo never drown me. So it still sounds like English, right? That's a good catch there. Yet one may also hear it as an amigo, a friend, never drown me, which sounds like Kendrick saying a friend wouldn't be out to get him. A fun line from Kendrick Lamar for sure, yet again displaying his elite pen, but either way, Kendrick has faith that he won't be put down by anyone before ending it with transparency, literally transparency, referencing the transparency of a double mirror as he admits that his life hasn't been mistake free, as we've heard throughout the album. We know this because double mirrors allow those on the outside to see what's going on in the inside without the individual on that other side knowing that they're being watched. While typically used in interrogation rooms, double mirrors have also been suspected to be used in some hotel rooms and even retail fitting rooms, while on more rare occasions. Kendrick adds that the mirror is in fact dirty, alluding to the fact that what people see is not clean. Brilliant work from Kendrick Lamar again, but as the intro ushers in the chorus now. And I love myself. When you're looking at me, tell me, what do you see? I put a bullet in the back of the head of the police. Illuminated by the hand of God, boy, don't seem shy. I love myself. One day at a time. Given that this song is about self-love, there are some connections here, even if it doesn't seem like it on the surface. First, Kendrick asks, when you look at me, what do you see? Which to us is rhetorical. And the singer saying, I love myself implies that no matter what the answer is, Kendrick loves who he is, and that's all that matters. Then Kendrick displays a bit of the revenge-filled anger that stems from police brutality. While it is a harsh statement, what he says, I believe the message is less about him actually wanting to kill the police and more about the love he has for himself and his people, given that in his grief for the ways Black people are treated, he wants to fight back. And again, I have to stress that for those who tend to take hip hop lyrics too literal, I really do think that's where Kendrick Lamar's heart was. And lastly, he stresses the importance of maintaining your confidence, knowing God's light is shown upon you, reflected in various verses in the Bible. But of course, the one that comes to mind for me is John 8:12. I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. This verse actually also fits with the bigger theme of Kendrick's self-love, as it reflects why he's able to channel that faith he has in himself, knowing it ultimately comes from God. After presumably addressing the negative images rappers themselves or rap media often portrays and pointing out how easy it can be to get high and run from one's circumstances, Kendrick's boldness and faith is shown again to end verse 1. Dreams of reality's peace, blow steam in the face of the beast. Sky could fall down, wind could cry now. Look at me, I smile. So Kendrick is able to look at the beast, often associated as the devil, in the face because of his faith in God and his confidence in himself. This self-love allows him to look at his surroundings and still smile with optimism, comparing his circumstances to worst-case scenarios like the sky falling or wind crying, which are signs that are often associated with the end of the world and sadness. After another rendition of the hook, we get into verse 2, where Kendrick Lamar emphasizes his confidence to express his emotions to what I believe is in his music and his spirit. Lift up your head and keep moving. Turn the mic up. Peace to fashion police. I wear my heart on my sleeve. Let the runway start. You know the miserable do love company. What do you want from me and my scars? Everybody lack confidence. Everybody lack confidence. How many times my potential was anonymous? How many times the city making me promises? So I promised this, homie. I thought that middle section about wearing his heart on his sleeve and reiterating that misery loves company was interesting because he seems to point out how since he's a musician that isn't shy to express his emotions in music, he wonders how it affects his listeners. If his fans are drawn to him because of his emotions, what do they expect to take from him bearing those feelings on record? Maybe he notices the ways that associating with a musician's misery in particular can reflect a lack of confidence to express one's own, which is why people often see the therapeutical value of music. I could be reaching, I could be a little bit all over the place. I'm not entirely sure, but those were just some of my first thoughts and the passing thoughts that came to mind as I revisited the song. But furthermore, Kendrick seems to reflect on his once anonymous or hidden potential as an MC and how Compton offers a false sense of hope because of its dichotomy, if you will, between its poor environment and the proximity to the fame associated with Hollywood. Nonetheless, Kendrick once again promises to love himself and remain confident despite the emotions and situations he deals with. And after the hook and a bridge, he starts verse 3, where the track hits a turning point. I went to war last night with an automatic weapon. Don't nobody call a medic. I'ma do it till I get it right. I went to war last night. I've been dealing with depression ever since an adolescent. ducking every other blessing. I can never see the message. I can never take the lead. I can never bob and weave from a negative and letting them annihilate me. And it's evident I'm moving at a meteor speed, finna run into a building, lay my body, and then it cuts off. So he starts the verse discussing his struggle with depression and what I took as self-sabotage, comparing depression to a war and its relentlessness to an automatic weapon as it constantly fires or attacks him. The self-sabotage may come in when he mentions that because of his depression, it forced him to duck or evade blessings. And then he builds on this idea of ducking as he then mentions how he struggled to evade the impact of depression, comparing it to the bobbing and weaving defense tactic in boxing. He continues on this subject, comparing the intensity of his struggles to the speed of a meteor, and implies that he is due to crash because of that speed. But the thing is, this is the part of the song where he is interrupted by commotion in the crowd, and it leads to a spoken word segment where he urges the crowd to calm down and choose peace. He urges them to make good use of the time that they have, noting that they have lost too many people that they were close with to escalate a situation that could have similar consequences. You'll notice how Kendrick settles the situation by expressing the same love he's alluded to throughout the song. And I say this because I love you ninjas, man. I love all my ninjas, bro. Enough said, enough said. And when we get back, and we gonna get back to the show and move on because that's petty, right? So after the crowd settles, he takes the moment to educate his people on the history of the N word, a lesson he was able to learn from his father. While the word has controversially evolved from a derogatory slur to to casual language, more so in the form of empowerment or endearment amongst black people, Kendrick highlights its origin, the word negus, which translates to royalty, right? So Kendrick then accuses America of keeping this knowledge away from black people and encourages his audience to apply the knowledge and help change the way the true N-word is perceived. He even addresses Oprah Winfrey with this in mind, as she had been known to blame hip-hop culture for why the word became more acceptable in society, even to those who aren't black. Let's look at this sequence from Kendrick as he ends the song in a powerful way, acknowledging that this new knowledge of the N-word actually represents the more positive, self-loving origin as opposed to the negativity often associated with it. My pops gave me some game in real person. Retraced my steps on what they never taught me. Did my homework fast before government caught me. So I'ma dedicate this one verse to Oprah on how the infamous, sensitive N-word control us. So many artists gave her an explanation to hold us. Well, this is my explanation straight from Ethiopia. Negus, definition, royalty, king royalty. Wait, listen. Negus, description, black emperor, king, ruler. Now let me finish. The history books overlook the word and hide it. America tried to make it into a house divided. The homies don't recognize we've been using it wrong, so I'm gonna break it down and put my game in a song. Negus, say it with me, or say it no more. Black stars can come and get me. Take it from Oprah Winfrey. Tell her she right on time. Kendrick Lamar, by far the realest niggas alive. And what I love about this is that it includes the exact education and depth that some people swear doesn't exist in hip hop. We've often heard the phrase originally uttered by Malcolm X: if you want to hide something from a black man, put it in a book, as it points to several different factors, like most notably flaws in the American education system. Some, I think, even black folks' disinterest in reading books for education purposes. I think more so in the age of technology. And just the fight to learn the parts of our history that fly under the radar, both intentionally and unintentionally. Kendrick takes this further and says, I bet since they hide it in books and, we either don't have access to or interest in, I'm going to put it in a hip hop song so it can reach us in an arguably faster and greater way. Of course, I could also even mention how as time and technology have advanced, it became easier to receive education from other mediums like YouTube and Google. And I could even include that same technology is what kind of distracts us as we tend to seek entertainment more than education. So point being, I just think Kendrick recognized the importance of including a lesson like this in a song and on an album like this, especially with the greater influence he has in pop culture. Another reason I appreciated it is because it reminded me of where I was when I first learned of the origins of the N-word. The only time I ever got the knowledge was as a freshman in high school, taking African American history. This was one of the most eye-opening lessons of my life to this day. And I think it points back to the fact that the black experience did not start with tragedy and struggle. You could say we were pimped, right? Our story started with a sense of pride and self-love that was eventually robbed and then had to be reignited. Kendrick Lamar used I to not just proclaim it for himself and allow us to put ourselves in the lyrics, but learn where it came from as well. Another example of an artist who understands what hip hop is supposed to do. And last but certainly not the least, after ending I as a torchbearer for Compton and black people all over the world, he ends the album with a track that reiterates his goal to bring a positive impact through his music while challenging us as fans to not just support what he's doing, but participate as well. It's time for the final track, Mortal Man. Kendrick Lamar draws inspiration from many leaders in this song, mainly Nelson Mandela and eventually his hip-hop hero Tupac Shakur, where he finally finishes the poem teased throughout the album to usher in a dreamlike conversation between him and Pac, using one of Tupac's interviews to orchestrate the back-and-forth dialogue. Before that, though, Kendrick tips off the song alternating between the chorus and the refrain, aware of his leadership position and responsibility to make a legacy-lasting impact with his platform. After this, he challenges fans to evaluate their loyalty and endurance in their support, understanding that leaders are often betrayed by their followers at some point. The ghost of Mandela, hope my flows stay propelling. Let these words be your earth and moon. You consume every message. As I lead this army, make room for mistakes and depression. And with that being said, my homie, let me ask this question. When ish hit the fan, is you still a fan? When ish hit the fan, when ish hit the fan, is you still a fan? When ish hit the fan, is you still a fan? We hear Kendrick draw inspiration from Nelson Mandela's mission to fight for racial equality in South Africa as he fought against apartheid from the 1940s to the late 1990s. Kendrick hopes his music brings about a similar devotion to his purpose and impact. Of course, Kendrick acknowledges that he isn't perfect and is due to experience mistakes and shortcomings, so he asks us, when ish hits the fan, will we still remain fans? As he plays on a fan used for cooling and a fan as in fanatic. Listening to this in 2025, I think especially in our era where cancel culture seems to be at an all-time high, Kendrick wanted to know whether or not his supporters will be loyal in support of his mission, knowing that his mistakes shouldn't define who he is. Kendrick uses the first verse to elaborate on this. Do you believe in me? Are you deceiving me? Could I let you down easily? Is your heart where it need to be? Is your smile on permanent? Is your vow on lifetime? Would you know where the sermon is if I died in this next line? If I'm tried in a court of law, if the industry cut me off, if the government want me dead, plant cocaine in my car, would you judge me a drug head or see me as K. Lamar or question my character and degrade me on every blog? Now, let's be clear. I do think we have to be mindful of idolatry, right? It's a dangerous thing when it comes to celebrities and public figures and things of that nature. But I think at the end of the day, the point isn't to worship Kendrick Lamar. In fact, we know that he ended up detailing that side of his influence on Savior in the Mr. Morale album. But because he has let us in on his values, morals, inspirations, and lessons he's learned, we can experience some of his authenticity and accountability. So as he essentially asks, will you ride for me if they ever try to bring me down? It challenges us to pick a side. Will we trust that Kendrick is who he says he is, or side with those who seek to damage his impact? He then ends the verse drawing more inspiration from the life of Nelson Mandela. Want you to love me like Nelson. Want you to hug me like Nelson. I freed you from being a slave in your mind. You're very welcome. You tell me my song is more than a song. It's surely a blessing, but a prophet ain't a prophet till they ask you this question. Kendrick wants to be appreciated and reachable like Nelson Mandela, who was incredibly revered for his efforts bringing peace to South Africa. Kendrick's music has had the tendency to resonate deeply with fans, and his conscious subject matters have inspired many of us to seek to let go of certain mindsets and behaviors, much like we've heard in this album. Kendrick acknowledges that the impact his music has on people, but still questions how loyal his fans are because, like a prophet who foresees future events, Kendrick knows how the world likes to bring down people with his influence. After the refrain and chorus, he starts verse 2 with more questions directed towards his fans. Do you believe in me? How much you believe in her? You think she gonna stick around if them 25 years occur? You think he can hold you down when you down behind bars hurt? You think y'all on common ground if you promise to be the first? Here, Kendrick rhetorically asks if his now wife would be able to stay loyal in the event that he would be sentenced to 25 years in jail, which happens to be 2 less years than the time Nelson Mandela's wife, Winifred, had to wait for him to return from prison. These lines pretty much help Kendrick transition into more questions centered around family. Can you be immortalized without your life being expired? Even though y'all share the same blood, is it worth the time? Like, who got your best interest? Like, how much are you dependent? How clutch are the people that say they love you and who pretending? I thought the first question from Kendrick was a really good one because it sure seems like oftentimes people of higher influence receive their flowers when they aren't present to smell them. Furthermore, I believe he questions if being this kind of person of influence is worth it as he struggles with even the family aspect of it all. Who really has his best interest at heart? Who's pretending to do so? Kendrick is certainly asking the tough questions here, and still he goes on. How tough your skin when they turn you in? Do you show forgiveness? What brush do you bend when dusting your shoulders from being offended? What kind of den did they put you in when the lions start hissing? What kind of bridge did they burn? Revenge on your mind when it's mentioned. First off, Kendrick alludes to the aspect of forgiveness, once again indirectly referencing how even when Nelson Mandela was thrown in prison for his political work, he sought unity and forgiveness. There's a quote from him that reads, "As I walked out the door toward the gate that would lead to my freedom, I knew if I didn't leave my bitterness and hatred behind, I'd still be in prison." Nelson Mandela made sure to embody the same characteristics he was fighting for, forgiveness and unity, in his hardest moment. Kendrick asks if one is real enough to have a similar spirit. Then Kendrick questions how one would respond to offense, references the idea of Daniel being thrown in the lion's den in the Bible, and essentially asks how our loyalty might be tested, and calls out how we may want to love like Mandela, yet we have revenge on our minds, unlike he did. You want to love like Nelson. You want to be like Nelson. You want to walk in his shoes, but you're peacemaking seldom. You want to be remembered that delivered the message, that considered the blessing of everyone. This your lesson for everyone. Say, Kendrick essentially calls us out for talking big but acting small. Pretty much. It's important to walk the walk, especially as a person of influence, knowing people are watching your every move. That said, in the third verse, Kendrick admits his own shortcomings in that regard, with the first lines as follows. I've been wrote off before. I got abandonment issues. I hold grudges like bad judges. Don't let me resent you. That's not Nelson like. Want you to love me like Nelson. I went to Robbins Island analyzing. That's where his cell is. So I could find clarity, like how much you cherish me. Kendrick confesses his abandonment issues and the fact that he had a tendency to hold grudges against people. And I think, understanding that it didn't mirror the character of his inspiration in Nelson Mandela, he reveals that he even went to Nelson Mandela's prison cell when he visited Africa to get greater clarity. And I think it shows how devoted Kendrick was to display the same characteristics as one of his inspirations. By visiting the place, they spent a large amount of time, especially a lot of time isolated, yet eager to continue their mission. Creatively, though, Kendrick kind of pronounces the word cell like soul. So there's kind of two different meanings there to further stress the idea that he didn't just want to study Mandela, he wanted to be where he was. It reminds me of how people like to visit Bethlehem and Jerusalem, where Jesus was born and crucified. Knowing that Jesus walked the same path that they're on tends to strengthen people's faith and provide an intimate, surreal experience. I think Kendrick was after the same thing. Next, Kendrick doesn't just question if his relationship with us is real, but now he's questioning if anything is real. Is this relationship a fake or real as the heavens be? See, I gotta question it all. Family, friends, fans, cats, dogs, trees, plants, grass, how the wind blow, Murphy's Law, Generation X. Will I ever be an X? This eventually builds up to the point where Kendrick recognizes the relationship might not be real because of how other leaders and public figures were treated. Flaws of a baby step, mauled by the mouth of pit bulls, put me under stress, crawled under rocks, ducking y'all. It's respect, but then tomorrow, put my back against the wall. How many leaders you say you needed, then left them for dead? Is it Moses? Is it Huey Newton or Detroit Red? Is it Martin Luther, JFK, Shooter, you assassin? Is it Jackie? Is it Jesse? Oh, I know it's Michael Jackson. Oh. Kendrick adds that the stress that comes with being a public figure makes him want to avoid the public. He then acknowledges the hot and cold nature of the game and that this world has turned against leaders since the beginning of time, even referencing Moses in the Bible, who was in charge of leading the Israelites to the promised land, but he didn't get to step foot in the promised land. He didn't get to enjoy it because he had doubted God. He also references Huey Newton, co-founder of the Black Panther Party, who was assassinated by the Black guerrilla family that featured former Black Panthers. Malcolm X, aka Detroit Red, who was assassinated by members of the Nation of Islam, which he had been affiliated with. He then references Martin Luther King Jr., who was controversially assassinated despite promoting unity between black and white people. JFK's assassination, which has also been met with controversy. And then he ends with Jackie, presumably Jackie Robinson, where I didn't quite catch why he would mention Jackie in this same kind of betrayal category. Maybe just because of the simple fact that because of the racism he encountered despite making history as the MLB player that broke the color barrier. And then, of course, presumably Jesse Jackson, who fell short trying to become the first African-American U.S. president. And then Michael Jackson, who faced controversy after his child molestation accusation. So point being, Kendrick drops all these names to further emphasize, if Ish hits the fan, are you sure you'll stick around for me? But even after that rendition and another chorus, the song isn't over as Kendrick finally finishes the poem we've heard snippets of all album long. I remember you was conflicted, misusing your influence. Sometimes I did the same. Abusing my power, full of resentment. Resentment that turned into deep depression. Found myself screaming in the hotel room. I didn't want to self-destruct. The evils of Lucy was all around me, so I went running for answers until I came home. But that didn't stop survivor's guilt. Going back and forth trying to convince myself the stripes I earned, or maybe how A1 my foundation was, but while my loved ones was fighting the continuous war back in the city, I was entering a new one. A war that was based on apartheid and discrimination. Made me want to go back to the city and tell the homies what I learned. The word was respect. Just because you wore a different gang color than mine doesn't mean I can't respect you as a black man. Forgetting all the pain and hurt we caused each other in these streets, if I respect you, we unify and stop the enemy from killing us. But I do know I'm no mortal man. Maybe I'm just another never ignorant getting goals accomplished. So we realize this whole time, Kendrick's poem was directed to Tupac. He compares Pac's influence to his own, finding common ground in their humanity. They both express the depression that came from their upbringings, the ups and downs of fame, the desire to impact the world in a greater positive way, and the desire to change their communities for the better. Funny enough, Kendrick ends the poem claiming that he isn't a mortal man, implying that his impact will stand the test of time before retracting and wondering if he's just another dude, or in fact, a mortal man. Here, Kendrick admits to Tupac that he wrote this hoping that it was something that Pac could relate to before initiating further conversation with him, who ends up telling Kendrick that he believes the ground would cave in and swallow those who are evil, a metaphor for the poor overcoming the rich. Furthermore, Kendrick continues to pick Pac's brain, asking him if he felt like he was one of the rich or someone who made the best of their opportunities. Of course, if you know Pac, you wouldn't be surprised that he responded by saying that he's a natural-born hustler. He went with the latter. And as the dialogue continues, Pac continues to share similar ideologies that Kendrick shared throughout this album, like how his faith in God kept him sane, how he felt like staying true to himself was his superpower. And after Kendrick continues to converse with Pac, he eventually brings the concept of To Pimp a Butterfly full circle and shares this theory with Pac, only to end with a cliffhanger. The caterpillar is a prisoner to the streets that conceived it. Its only job is to eat or consume everything around it, in order to protect itself from this mad city. While consuming its environment, the caterpillar begins to notice ways to survive. One thing it noticed is how much the world shuns him, but praises the butterfly. The butterfly represents the talent, the thoughtfulness, and the beauty within the caterpillar. But having a harsh outlook on life, the caterpillar sees the butterfly as weak and figures out a way to pimp it to its own benefits. Already surrounded by this mad city, the caterpillar goes to work on the cocoon, which institutionalizes him. He can no longer see past his own thoughts. He's trapped. When trapped inside these walls, certain ideas take root, such as going home and bringing back new concepts to this mad city. The result? Wings begin to emerge, breaking the cycle of feeling stagnant. Finally free, the butterfly sheds light on situations that the caterpillar never considered. Ending the internal struggle, although the butterfly and caterpillar are completely different, they are one and the same. What's your perspective on that? Pac. Man, crazy, right? Crazy. Notice how Kendrick connects the two albums, this one and his previous Good Kid, Mad City. He depicts the different stages of life between the caterpillar and the butterfly. One has to go through the grind. The other gets to enjoy the fruit of that journey. Of course, the caterpillar seems to be offended by that, right? Why do I have to be the one trapped in this mad city? But the thing is, what it sees as unfair is the environment that actually ends up fostering the lessons needed to become the butterfly. The way I see Kendrick's analogy is this. The caterpillar is what you see, but the butterfly is who you are. Ooh. Kendrick cooked with this whole concept, man. So it does kind of reflect what I mentioned in the intro, right? How everyone likes to marvel at the butterfly, yet didn't get to see the part of the cycle where they were a caterpillar. And with Kendrick flipping the word pimp to carry a positive connotation, he highlights how the caterpillar was able to use his differences to become what it was always destined to become. And of course, with that, we have finally made it to the end of this album breakdown. Man, I had to break this in 2 parts, man. And I really appreciate you sticking around. Like, and I'm sure you can tell, like, my voice is hoarse. Like, I kind of overdid it and really took it to the limit here. But what a journey this was. Would you believe me if I told you that? Well, I'm sure you would now, but would you believe me if I told you we just went through 60 pages of notes for this album breakdown? All for the love of hip hop, man. Final thoughts from me. Kendrick Lamar, Duckworth is incredible. To Pimp a Butterfly is the definition of an album. Notice how each song connected to the next, and even the songs later in the track list connected to songs that were earlier in the first half. And not even just the concepts either, but the titles, right? Institutionalized kind of connects with These Walls. Complexion connects with The Black of the Berry. I mean, Kendrick put every bit of detail into this masterpiece. This is what art is supposed to do: challenge thought patterns, bring forth different perspectives, share worldviews, and inspire those who listen. Kendrick Lamar checked all those boxes. As always, I genuinely hope you give this album a listen, whether it's for the first time or the millionth time. I certainly hope that I was able to help you understand the themes of growth, unity, impact, knowledge, vulnerability, self-love, and so many more that showed up across this album. I sincerely appreciate you giving my review of all the ones that are likely out there a listen and taking time out of your day to hear my thoughts, my lengthy thoughts on some of hip hop's finest work. Again, I do put a lot of time into these album breakdowns, so please, I encourage you to share any thoughts, different perspectives, or even constructive criticism for me, as I simply just want to share the love of hip hop with you. I'm always around for further discussion on Twitter or IG at Desmond _, or of course at Hip to the Games if you want to talk some more. But in the meantime, here's to another reflection of the God-gifted brilliance of hip-hop's past and present. Shout out to Kendrick Lamar for letting us in on his journey from the Mad City to the hip-hop icon, giving us education, introspection, inspiration, and affirmation that still stands 10 years later, and for encouraging us to embrace the caterpillar so we can thrive as butterflies. And of course, here's a huge shout out to you for being hip to the games, and I thank you so much for sticking around for another jam-packed episode, all for the love of the best combo there is. Peace out, and God bless. Hope you enjoyed this episode of Hip to the Games, and if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to hit up the socials at Desmond _ and at Hip to the Games on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok so you don't miss out on the fun. And please follow or subscribe to the show and leave a review on the podcast platform you're on right now, as your support is greatly appreciated.